Open up the cone part and then do a file save as, and I'm going to put this into a new folder that I named line plane joint, and I'm going to call this new part wedge, W-E-D-G-E. And then I'm going to delete the revolution feature. I don't want to delete the sketch though, so make sure you uncheck consume sketch. And I will then extrude this a distance of, let's make it 1.5 inch, 1.5. And then I'm going to mirror this to the other side. So I will do mirror. I'll tell it to mirror the entire solid body. I'll select the mirror plane, and I could either select that face or select the origin plane. I always prefer to select the origin plane when possible, and then I'll save my wedge. I'll start a new assembly, and I'll bring in my planar plate that we did from the previous problem, and I've added a few colors on here. You can do that. And then I'm going to do place, and I will go to the line plane folder, and I will place the wedge, and I'll put this someplace onto the screen to have that above my table. Then I'm going to constrain the origin of the wedge, and I put it here on this corner. I actually would have preferred, although it doesn't matter, that it was mid-plane. So let's go back to the wedge part, and I'm going to edit that feature, and I'll set it to extrude this mid-plane. I'll save it and then go back to my assembly, and then I can constrain the origin of the wedge to the origin of this table. So I'll do constrain, and I'm going to select this point if I can get it. So I'll get the center point of the planar plate to the center plate of the wedge. Now I was trying to see why I did this, if I could get an edge of the part, and we could get this edge and constrain that to this face, and I'll say okay to that. Now I'm not sure that we want to keep that constraint, but we'll see here in a few minutes. I'm going to suppress the first constraint that we did to the origins because I want this to be able to move around. And so I'm going to name this though as home position 1. And then I will suppress that. Now before I suppress it, if I try to move this thing, it moves around that point, but that line stays against the face. I purposely want this at least a little bit of an angle rather than straight up and down. I don't want it to be balanced on that when gravity takes effect. And so let's suppress this constraint, and now it can be move anywhere on this table, but it is staying, that line is staying on the table. Now in 3D it can look confusing when we get off of the table, but it's staying on that table. And then if I want to get that back to that home position, I can just right click, unsuppress the home position, it'll move back, and then I'll suppress that again. So I'll go to Environments, Dynamic Simulation, and I see that it is automatically converted to a line planar joint. Now if we wanted to do that manually, again, if we go to the simulation settings, I'm going to turn off the automatically convert. I'll tell it no, not to retain that joint, and then to put that in manually, I will put in the line plane, and you can get it from this drop down list, or you can go through the joints table. I'll just do it from the drop down list. So line plane. Now in earlier versions of Inventor, and this is going back maybe 3 or 4 years ago, when if you did this next step, it would immediately crash. They have fixed it in, I think from 2019 version on, it is fixed. But if you're doing these in an earlier version of Inventor, 2018 I think, 2017, somewhere back in there it would crash. So I'll select for the first component, I'll select a table, and for the second component I'll select this line, and it moved it somewhere back here, and so I'm going to have to move this up, get it up here. And again, if you're only doing a few calculations, it can be hard to control it. So one way to make it easier to control is increase the number of calculations. If I put that up to 1,000 calculations, it won't move as fast because it has to do more calculations. So I have this on this plane, the line, and then I want to assign gravity. So I will come over to the external loads, I'll right click, I'll tell it to define gravity. I'm going to put gravity perpendicular to that face. And then we saw before, if I go ahead and play this, it's just going to fall right through this. So I also want to do a contact joint. I'm going to do a 3D contact between the table as the first component and the wedge, and you can pick anywhere on the table or the wedge when you're selecting this. And so I'll select the second component and I'll say OK to that, and then I'll go ahead and play it.